Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Rap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan. The show that celebrates small business and entrepreneurs, it's Biz Rap Radio with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan. And welcome to another edition of Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining me today. Now, this is our second show after we took about a 7 month hiatus. Where I rested up a little bit, rethought how the show was going to be delivered. And, of course, if you have not heard of Biz Rap Radio before, we are the show that is all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here to help small businesses do a better job of what they do, creating employment, creating wealth for their owners, allowing business owners to make profits so they can take care of their family, they can take care of their friends, they can take care of their employees. And we're also very interested in the big issue that many small businesses face, which is how do you get the money to run your small business? You know, capital is very tough to come by. I work with a lot of companies that are trying to raise capital. It's not easy to get investors to invest in, particularly the early stage companies. But even companies that have been around a while, you know, the traditional banks are not lending to those companies. Many business owners now are having to finance their business on credit cards, and it just is becoming increasingly difficult. The other challenge a lot of small business people face is they really just don't know what they're doing. They don't reach out and get the advice, the assistance, the help they need to put together effective business plans and strategies and to launch their business. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how can you do a better job as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, of developing your business idea, launching your business idea, perhaps growing your business. And I've got somebody in studio with me, been a good friend and associate of mine for many years. It's Joe Bergin. Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, Mike.
Now, Joe, you are an entrepreneur yourself. You've owned a number of businesses. But in addition to that, you also work as a SCORE counselor. And that is, you tell me, what is a SCORE counselor?
Well, it's actually called SCORE Business Mentor, Mike. And the SCORE organization, as you know, is a federal one that's been set up for many, many years. And they have chapters all across the country where they allow people like me who have a certain amount of business experience to go in, apply to become a SCORE mentor, go through a business training course, and then work with a mentor and be allowed to run free then as a mentor in your own right. So what happens is somebody's interested in starting their business or improving their own business, they'll go onto score.gov and look for a mentor. And there's a list of mentors, our photograph, and our sort of skill sets. So if you looked for me, you'd find that I nominate myself as good at startups or franchising. So they make contact with you. And you know what I do is I say, right, meet me in Starbucks at 10 o'clock on Tuesday or whatever. And I sit down with somebody and I listen. And I kind of elicit the sort of information I need to try and help them best. And by the way, I'm not here to say to these guys, look, this business is great or this is not good. I just encourage them to reach the decision themselves by careful questioning. And usually when they talk to you about the business, you can hear the hollow sounds where they're unsure or there's areas that they need to really address. So I'm a listener, and because I've made plenty of errors in the past, I've got some useful tips to offer. So this SCORE, this group of volunteers under SCORE, that's something that's under the Small Business Administration. Is that who administers it? Yes, they're in partnership with SCORE. As both of them are federal organizations, yeah.
Yeah, and do you get paid for doing this, or is this a truly volunteer thing?
Oh, it's absolutely voluntary. We don't take any form of payment or inducement. No, it's people who've got time and wish to give back. We've walked the walk, and now it's time to be able to help those who are in our shoes from 20 years before.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, is it typically young people who are coming in to see you? Or do you see people of all ages?
Well, typically they are young to middle age. They've perhaps got fed up with corporate life. Maybe they've been laid off, or maybe they've always had a dream to run their own business. There are some seniors come along, but in the main, I'd say they're in their sort of middle ages.
Right. That's a big issue we have in this country. Remember, of course, people obviously can hear that you have an English accent, so you're maybe not from this country, but it was probably the same in England, that there was a time when, people went to work for a company. They graduated from high school or college. They went to work for a company, and, 40 years later, they retired from that company. But today, particularly if you work for big corporations, my gosh, all they need is a little dip in whatever the profits drop for a quarter, or the stock of the price drops for a couple of weeks, or I don't know, that some analyst comes out and says the company's not doing well, and the very next thing, the boys in the boardroom are chopping jobs left, right, and center. I mean, you see these announcements in the Wall Street Journal, these big corporations laying off 10,000 people at a time. So really, as almost like a protective measure, it seems to me that people who are in the workforce and at all concerned about having some security and not being laid off, they should be thinking about opening a business and starting a business.
I would take caution there, Mike, because it's wonderful to see people have a dream and go for it and make it happen, but the reality is a lot tougher than that, and certainly I would never, ever discourage anybody from trying, but what I have seen is that people come along with a kind of a dreamy vision without some really hard, thought-out facts. An awful lot of people I've interviewed have no idea what a business plan is, or they've heard of it, but don't really understand what it does. And so they're coming along with an idea, a dream, but without some sort of metrics, some analysis that would actually tell you, look, in spreadsheet terms, this is not going to work, or in metric terms, there's some serious areas you need to consider. So I do encourage people to say, look, let's go through a business plan, so make sure you've covered all the points that you need to consider. And as we work through it, then we can start to see the areas you need to really address.
So I mean, what you're telling me is some people really don't understand the rigors of being a business owner. Do you ever come across somebody who thinks that, oh my gosh, I'm going to start this business and that's it, tomorrow I'm going to be Mark Zuckerberg, I'm going to be worth $1 billion or something?
Yeah, there are people who are a little bit overly optimistic, shall we say, and I hate to kill any enthusiasm, and I don't as much as ask questions which make them see the scary reality of it all. There's no point not helping someone by discouraging, if necessary. If they haven't got the information required to develop that business, then they're going to start to lose money and become very dispirited. So my guidance is always by encouraging to do their diligence. Get those numbers on paper.
So that's part of whether you're running a business and trying to move it to the next level, or whether you're trying to start a business. And I've experienced this with entrepreneurs. Very often, they want to. What's the old adage? It's shoot, fire, aim. They don't get a target in sight first. They just want to charge ahead, without really giving their actions and their activity enough thought and contemplation, and that involves a little bit of work. I mean, it takes time to research the marketplace, to look at different alternative ways of growing your business. What tools do you need to serve your customers? I mean, all of that is thoughtful stuff. You can't just fly into it blindly. Is that? Do you see that as a major problem with entrepreneurs?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Mike. One of the problems is for people who are new to business, they see it as glamorous. It's the way to riches, to wealth, and you can get this Hollywood Beverly Hills image. But what people don't seem to realize is the enormous amount of hard work that goes behind creating the smallest business. You really have to nickel and dime your way through all the options, all the angles, all the challenges. And that's why I always come back to the business plan, because it's such a well-tried and tested template. And if you can go through that thoroughly and put all your information on, then you've got a good chance of having something on which you can develop. I often say, look, if you can get a business plan that is so well thought out that the bank will loan you money against it, that's a real endorsement that you've done some great work and there's a chance of it succeeding. If you can't get there, if you haven't got the confidence of the bank, it tells you there's probably something very wrong there.
Wow, that's good advice. So we are talking to Joe Bergin. Joe is a SCORE counselor. He's also a small businessman and entrepreneur. I, of course, am Mike Manahan. This is Biz Rap Radio, and we're going to be right back. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. This is your host, Michael Manahan. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I am having in studio with me Mr. Joe Bergin. Joe is a SCORE counselor. That's SCOR. It's affiliated with the Small Business Administration, and basically SCORE counselors provide free counseling to people who are starting up a business or perhaps trying to launch or take their business to the next level. And Joe, again, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Mike.
So you have met, I can imagine, people with all crazy business ideas. Can you maybe give us what was one of the craziest business ideas you've ever heard from one of your, what would you call the people you counsel? Your customers? You call them your clients? What do you describe them?
Well, I'm a mentor, so I guess they're mentees.
Mentees, okay.
I guess, yeah. But they come from all walks of life, Mike. So, and I wouldn't want to cite any particular example because I don't want to make anybody feel bad about what they've done, because I support anybody who wants to run their own business. And, hey, some of these ideas come from some strange directions, but they can grow and develop as they come along. So I never knock anybody, and indeed I wouldn't be so arrogant to think I could say this is a good business or that's not such a good business. My job.
Well, how about on the creativity side? Did you ever have somebody? Because I'll tell you about a business that somebody approached me with. He wanted to put in a truck stop halfway between L.A. and Las Vegas, and he wanted to dig a big pond and have a trout farm so that basically the truckers could stop, have a rest, go do a little trout fishing, catch a trout, have the trout for dinner, then get back in their truck and move on. And I don't know if that would work. I don't know if there's a demand from truckers for trout farms, but I'll tell you, I gave him A+ for creativity on that one.
Yeah, that sounds really out of the box thinking, doesn't it? Would that work? I have no idea, but you can start with this sort of dreamy idea. And again, like I say, having got the idea and you've got the passion, the enthusiasm, put it down on paper and let's see what a spreadsheet creates. Once you've got those numbers together, the numbers will tell you the story about whether it's going to work or not. So I would encourage anybody to dream and think out of the box, and who knows about this one, but that's exciting. You never know where it might lead.
Now, you mentioned numbers, and of course, as you know, I teach accounting. I often have students come to me and say, "Oh, Professor, I'm not good with numbers. I know I'm going to do very poorly in this accounting course." And I always try and reassure them that really accounting is certainly not from a complex mathematical perspective difficult. I mean, it's basically adding, subtracting, maybe dividing and multiplying. But it is important for business owners to understand the financial side of their business. And so what do you recommend to the business owner who says, well, I'm the creative guy, I can come up with all these good ideas, or I know how to market, but I don't know anything about accounting and I don't know how to put together a budget. What do you say to that person?
Well, if they don't know how to do it, they need somebody who can, which means you can either partner up with somebody. I had a partner many years ago who was fantastic with an Excel spreadsheet. He could turn a dream into numbers very, very quickly, maybe using assumptions or hard facts or a combination of both. But if you don't have that skill, and I've heard it said that Richard Branson can't read an income statement, but look
Wow.
where he's got. But he's done it because he's got a team. Somebody within his organization, very close up there, will have worked him through the numbers to show him the pitfalls, almost certainly. So if you don't know how to do it, go ahead and learn it, I suggest, because you really would benefit from being able to make an analysis yourself rather than depending on somebody else. But if it's your given that you want to stay on the creative side, then have a partner with that skill or go and pay an accountant.
Well, that just makes all the sense in the world, yeah, because and I would have another piece of advice. If you do pay somebody or give somebody a piece of your company to handle the financial side, that's no excuse for being ignorant of the financial side. And I have met CEOs of even some fairly good-sized companies who, when pressed, could not explain projections or information included in their financial statements. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, you don't think you have the skill set to put together your own forecasts, your own budget, so you decide to use somebody else. You hire somebody or you give somebody some stock in your company to do that for you. I think it's really important that you force that person to explain to you as the business founder and creator what they are doing, so that if somebody presses, well, two reasons. One is if somebody presses you on the numbers, you can explain them. Secondly, you by understanding what your the financial side of your business is doing, whether it's your accountant, your bookkeeper, your financial partner, you may identify problems or issues that the financial person has not identified. So I don't think you can be ignorant of this stuff. Now, okay, so you got to put some, Joe, you've said you got to put some numbers down and see what it looks like. What about a business plan? I've heard this, some people have talked recently about the skinny business plan, I think they call it. Have you heard of that?
No, and I don't like the sound of that either, because skinny sounds like it's superficial or glossing over the real salient points. I think you've got to know that the business plan has been developed over many, many years. It's a tried and tested template that you can't ignore. Well, ignore it at your peril, because it covers all the vital ingredients of your business. And if you address each subject as they suggest you do, I think you can walk away confidently saying, well, I've done my diligence. Without that, you're going to miss something. The brightest amongst us fail. Was it 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years? And that's, I think, because there are so many things that you need to pay attention to. And a well-run small business comprises a lot of little things done very well. And if you miss out on one or two of those, they can start to make the whole structure crumble.
Yeah, that is such good advice. I often see businesses that are struggling, and the owner is looking for what I would call the proverbial silver bullet. They're looking for one idea or one solution that is somehow going to remake their entire business enterprise. But I think the reality is typically businesses that are struggling and having problems have a myriad of issues. It's not one single thing that you can fix and then everything's great and you're off to the races. I think you have to be doing a lot of small things very well in a business in order to make it successful. And I know, Joe, you struggle with that as a business owner, but you have to be looking at your marketing. You have to be looking at your employees. You have to be looking at your pricing. You have to be looking at your customer service. You have to be looking at your finances. There's a lot of moving parts in a business, and the successful business owner, he's got to have his finger in all of these pies. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And it springs to mind the phrase, you should be working on your business, not in your business. It's very easy, let's say, typically in a retail scenario, to get behind the counter and there start working hard and serving the customers and saving a bit of payroll. But really, you should be behind the business in the sense that you're not at the immediate interface, apart from maybe checking from time to time to see that things are done to the right standard. But you should be analyzing all those things within the business that make it grow. Growth as in sales, bringing the money in the door. And you can't often see that. You can't see the wood for the trees if you're bogged down in all the trivia of what your staff should be doing. So I think it's really important that you pay attention to all the inner parts of the business. And by that I mean, for example, doing a monthly reconciliation of your accounts. You could, of course, hand it to an accountant, pay them money, or a bookkeeper does it for you. But when you actually work through individually, blow by blow, your profit centres and their costs, it can be pretty shocking that certain areas are red flagged. They're growing out of proportion to their need, or that standing order you have for a service you had before has now lapsed and should be closed out. You need to be in charge of those numbers. So working on your business is really, really vital.
Yeah, that is really, really good advice. And I've been guilty of that over the years. I've, as you know, owned a number of businesses. I think you've got to be there. You've got to be in the moment with that business. You've got to be present. You can't hand everything off to others and hope that they will take the same interest and passion in your business as you will. It's just not going to happen. And this really happens big time, I know, in the financial arena, because often people shuffle that off to a finance guy. But if that finance guy isn't on the ball, isn't doing his job, that can get you into hot water very, very quickly. Well, look, we're coming up for another break here. It's Mike Manahan, Biz Rap Radio. My guest, Joe Bergin from SCORE. He's a business counselor, entrepreneur, and small business owner. And we are here talking about entrepreneurship and small businesses and how you grow them and how you make them better and how you go out there and take the market by storm. And we'll be back right after this. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. We, of course, are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. And if you are just joining us, we have been talking this hour with Joe Bergin. And Joe is a SCORE counselor. That's an SCOR counselor. Basically, Joe volunteers his time. He's an entrepreneur and a business person, and he volunteers his time to help other entrepreneurs and people who are starting businesses or trying to take their business to the next level. He basically acts as a mentor, gives them advice, challenges their ideas and their assumptions, and helps them hopefully make better decisions so they don't get themselves into hot water. And again, Joe, thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're welcome, Mike.
Okay, so here's a question for you. If somebody's interested in getting the services of a SCORE counselor, or perhaps even interested in having you as a SCORE counselor, where do they go again?
Okay, so log on to score.gov. That's the federal organization. Or you can localize it, like in our case, to scorela.gov, as in Los Angeles. When you go onto the site, you can meet the mentors. Now, when you select this tab, you'll find an alphabetical list of all the active mentors in the area. Most importantly, each of the mentors gives a little bio of their past and experience and the sort of thing that they're passionate about doing, the areas of expertise they have. So if you happen to want someone with some tax background or someone who's been an import-export, they're available to you. I just offer specialist startup and also franchising. So if you say we're interested in those fields, you would look at, first of all, probably my location. Many of the mentors meet in our local headquarters in Glendale, but I operate from downtown Long Beach. So if you approached me and thought, well, Joe's in the Long Beach area and I live around the corner, that might be best for you, might be much more convenient. So the first thing I'll do, and I just received one in my email literally this morning, is somebody saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And they give a short explanation and ask if they can meet up. Now, if I think that I'm suitably qualified to help them, I'll get straight back and say, yep, you know what, Mike, meet me at Starbucks at the back of the Renaissance there in downtown Long Beach, Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and we'll have a cup of coffee and a chat. And that's the format. Now, if I also thought, well, hey, this is a little bit beyond my expertise, I'll bounce it back and say, you know what, there are people out there better placed to help you on this particular subject. So nip back through the mentor list and find another. So one way or another, they can pick and choose who they want to help. And you can note, of course, that having had a session with me, if you want to go and expand further, you can go to any of the other mentors as well. We won't have our nose put out of joint by you moving sideways or gathering various angles, but they're all there to help. And there's some people on the mentor list who've been around for a long, long time and have great experience to offer.
This, to me, is such an important part of being a successful business person. We need to be building, breeding, training, whatever you want to call it, that new crop of entrepreneurs, the people who are going to be starting the businesses that are employing the people. You know, Joe, if you look at recessions, and of course we seem to have them in the United States on a cyclical basis, all of the new job growth, or most of the job growth, as we pull out of a recession, actually comes from small businesses. It's not, General Motors and Hewlett-Packard and these big corporations that are creating the jobs. If anything, they're doing the opposite. They're, putting in technology that's eliminating jobs. But the small businesses and entrepreneurs, they're the ones who create most of the new jobs. But you got to do it intelligently. I love the idea of a SCORE counselor giving advice to potential entrepreneurs, but it just doesn't start there. There are so many organizations out there that help small business people and entrepreneurs, and one that I'm associated with is the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center. It's located in Torrance, California. We, for the most part, help businesses in the Los Angeles area, particularly in the kind of that Long Beach, Torrance, Carson, Redondo Beach area. But we'll talk to anybody, and you can go to the SBEC website. If you go to bizrap.org and you click on resources, you'll see the SBEC website there. And we have a very aggressive program of mentorship, and we have both paid and unpaid programs. So if you don't have a lot of money, you can participate in one of the unpaid programs. If you do have more money, you can actually opt for very reasonably priced paid programs where people will actually work with you as an entrepreneur to develop your business plan and develop your financial projections, your strategy, which is really important, and then help you get launched and up and running, and maybe even raise some money. And I'll give you one example. We had a company that came to the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center, I'm going to say it was about a year and a half ago, and they had developed or quasi-developed a piece of software that was used in the building mapping industry. Basically, if you have a building, you've got these electrical wires running everywhere, and a lot of buildings, you really don't know where those wires are running and what fuse box they're connected to, and they basically have a system for mapping all of that stuff. Well, when they came to us, they really had a product that was close to being finished, but they weren't sure about their distribution strategy. They weren't sure about their market. They weren't sure about how to get the product to market, and they didn't have any capital. And since that time, working with the mentors at the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center, that company has launched their product. They have numerous paying customers. They have raised capital, and they are on the verge of signing a major distribution agreement with a very large corporation here in the U.S. And I have to say, a lot of what happened to that company was the result of mentors and different mentors giving them advice and coaching them and challenging their assumptions and their ideas. So that just kind of gives you an example. So, Joe, have you had any businesses that you've mentored, and maybe a year later or a year and a half later they called you back and they said, "Hey, Joe, remember me? I launched my business and now I'm successfully running it," or any? Do you have any stories like that?
There's a few, and I have to say, Mike, most of my meetings are once, and I think that's usually because the person involved has realized that there's actually a bigger issue at stake here, and they need to go back and probably drop the idea altogether. But I did have one very successful gentleman. He'd been in Japan, and he saw what was a cat cafe. And it was a concept.
Oh, hang on, a cat cafe?
Yeah, it's a very popular concept where people go for a cup of coffee, buy their cup of coffee, then they go through some sort of segregation into an area where there's lots of cats sitting around wandering
like
about.
isn't meow cats.
Exactly that. and it's supposed to be very therapeutic to sit down and relax, have your cup of coffee, and be able to, sit up next to a cat, have them sit on your lap and scratch their ears or whatever you do. And he was really taken by this idea. And he was one of the first guys I mentored, and I loved the guy's passion. He wanted to set one up in L.A. And several times since we've met, he's been back to me just to give me updates and just to pick my brains on a few areas. I think the last time was looking at crowdfunding to raise money for the idea. So I can't remember exactly now, but I think he's pretty close to setting it up somewhere in the Japanese sector of L.A.
Well, that's kind of cool. Now, do you think is that a Japanese thing, or do you think that the Westerners would like a cat cafe too?
Well, you know what? He was doing some great diligence, and the response he was getting was really positive, and I know he'd raised quite a considerable amount of money through his crowdfunding. So that's a real endorsement of the value of what he'd spotted.
Well, and this goes full circle back to something we talked about, earlier in the show, was creativity. I mean, you could say, I want to open a coffee shop. Well, you want to know something that's been done. You could say, I want to open a coffee shop that offers 25 different kinds of coffee. Well, you want to know that's been done too. But how about a coffee shop that's got animals that you can pet? Now, here's my question. Is there anybody thinking of opening a coffee shop that has a bunch of goats and you go in there and play with the goats while you're having your coffee?
Well, you try that one, Mike.
Anyways, it's Mike Manahan. This is Biz Rap Radio, and I am with Joe Bergin. He is a SCORE counselor, a businessman, and entrepreneur himself, and we're talking about entrepreneurship and small businesses and how you can kind of get started and use mentors to help you do a better job of starting your business. And we're going to be right back after these messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Again, thank you for joining me today. Again, if you're new to Biz Rap Radio, we are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here to help you, as a business person, do a better job of running your business. I mean, you've got an obligation. We need you to employ the people in this country. We need you to make a profit. We need you to use that profit to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your employees. That's what small businesses are all about. You're very important in the economy of the United States of America, and we certainly in the U.S. have a great entrepreneurial spirit that I think permeates through our society. And it's sad right now that we see very often this kind of war on business going on out there, where it seems everybody who's in business is somehow tarnished with a bad name. Now, I'm not talking about the fat cats on Wall Street or those big mega corporations, because, quite frankly, I think they're at war with small business. They just as soon put all you small guys out of business. But we need you here, small business people. And we're talking about the resources. And I say we, of course, because I've got Joe Bergin. He's a SCORE counselor, small businessman, entrepreneur, in studio with me. And as we've mentioned, SCORE is a volunteer association of elder statesmen in the business world, I guess you would call it, who mentor people who have business ideas. And it brought up the subject of the resources that are available, and I mentioned the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center. You can go to my website, which is bizrap.org, bizrap.org. Go on resources, and you can connect with the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center. But, Joe, there are other places and other resources that people who are trying to start businesses or are trying to jumpstart their business that they can go to get information. And you were mentioning a couple, so why don't you talk a little bit more about that for us?
Yes, Mike. And just in clarification, SCORE stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. So it smacks of a little older folk, but don't let that put you off. It's the experience, the experience that's really, really important, and it's available to you all completely free. Now, in addition to that, the SCORE areas are what they call chapters. So I belong to the SCORE LA chapter, and our headquarters is in Glendale. Now, if you were to go on the SCORE website, scorela.gov, you will see various seminars and courses that are run usually in the Glendale office, and they're for very little money, maybe $25, and they'll be on such subjects as starting your own business, just a general foundation, or how to write a business plan, And they'll also then go into deeper, more specific subjects like how to start an export-import business. And what happens then is they'll bring in experts from that field who will run the seminar maybe for an afternoon or for 2 or 3 days, and you sit and attend and get some very personalized guidance, which could be very, very important in setting up your own business. So I guess, Mike, the answer here is don't go it alone. Most people who are successful in business have support from various agencies or families or friends, or they're in a partnership. Well, the partnership you're getting from SCORE is primarily free through the mentors themselves, who will give you any amount of time, either in person or on the phone. And then there's these additional classes and seminars at the SCORE headquarters in Glendale, which also means then that the SCORE chapters throughout the country have their own resources, which I'm pretty sure are all very, very similar, depending on your location. Now, if you happen to be in Long Beach, for example, we have another organization affiliated with the SBA, the Small Business Administration Group, which is called the SBDC, the Small Businesses Development Council. I think that's the phrase. And it's rather like my own SCORE organization. They have mentors, and they have lots of different seminars and courses which they run through the Long Beach City College. So those are available to you, and I'm pretty sure if you were to Google in your own area, whether you're in New York or Texas, you'll find similar resources there. So dive on into Google and put in the question you have, the resources you need, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, the amount of available support that small businesses have that is either extremely low cost or free is just phenomenal. And it disappoints me so much when I meet entrepreneurs, and I meet them all the time, who have not answered basic fundamental questions about their business. And I will say, well, have you done some research? Have you talked to people? And say, I don't know who to talk to, or I don't know what research to do. There's tons of people out there who can help you with your small business, and there's a lot of these volunteer organizations. Chambers of Commerce often have them. I know that some of the professional organizations, such as attorneys or CPAs, they have some of these seminars and things, and very often they're free for you to attend. There's senior business advisors. In fact, if you want to come across as a savvy business person, that you know what you're doing, part of it is being able to demonstrate to, say, potential investors, as an example, if you're going to be looking for money. And we haven't talked a lot about money on this show so far, but that, of course, is extremely important. But if you're looking for money, one of the things you want to be demonstrating to the people who have the money, whether it's lenders or whether it's investors, if you're looking for equity, is that you are a person who has done your homework, that you have gone out there and talked to people who are experts and who are knowledgeable and who know more than you do, because I can assure you, you don't know everything. There is always somebody who knows more than you do, and you want to tap into those people and use their resources. And if it's not costing you any money, I'm not suggesting here you go hire some high-priced Beverly Hills law firm and get the advice of some, attorney at $900 an hour. I'm talking about free. This is stuff that is free. And so you want to avail yourself of these resources, build your knowledge base, build the people you can, your group of advisors and people you can connect with, who can help you make better decisions. So, Joe, I was reading an article about success of venture capital enterprises. Now, these are the types of firms that the big venture capital funds invest in, and the venture capital firms that invest in companies that have a team as opposed to one individual, those companies that typically have a team where you've got a finance guy, maybe a technology guy, maybe a marketing guy, before the money comes in, those companies tend to be more successful than just the lone entrepreneur who gets a bunch of money from the VC firm and then has to start actually building his team. Because in those in those businesses where the team develops before you get your funding, the people involved are passionate about the business. Whereas very often, once you've got your funding, the people you bring in are coming in for a paycheck, and they don't have the same passion as the business founders. Well, Joe, this has been great. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Any final sage advice for our listeners who might be thinking about starting a business out there?
Yeah, just one thing, Mike. When you've decided you want to go into business, unless you have some secret formula for some new pharmaceutical drug or something that you need to keep tucked away and hidden, I would recommend you tell as many people as you can of what you have in mind. And this is a really interesting thing to do, because you'll get a lot of people who will try and destroy your dream. You'll get a lot of people who are naysayers, but you'll also get a lot of people who are supportive and encouraging, and then a bunch of people will start to ask you questions about what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And it's really great exposure for you to reanalyze your project. And sometimes you'll say, oh my God, I didn't think about that, or, that's a really good point. Let me go further and dig down in it. So I think there's a great temptation to keep this secret hidden because you're going to be the next Facebook founder or whatever. But the reality is different, and I think there's a lot of resources out there amongst your friends and associates who you can tap into by saying, you know what, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Have you got any thoughts about it? Any angles that, I might not have considered? Don't keep it to yourself.
That is great advice. Share your idea. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Yes, you're going to have to put up with a few naysayers, but a lot of people will be enthusiastic and encouraging, so that is good advice. Thank you, Joe, for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
And, of course, we at BizRap Radio, we're fixing the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people than can ever be achieved through government regulation and a planned economy. I am Mike Manahan, your host of BizRap Radio. And, of course, we will be back again next week with another edition of BizRap Radio. Thanks so much for listening today.